Hey, everybody. Welcome to Keep It Spiritually Simple. I'm your host, Sandra McEllis, and we are going to continue our topic on addiction. And
Mm.
we are welcoming Heather and Jason, who are addiction specialists, and they have been on before. So you need to subscribe, like, and share, leave us a comment, maybe even a question so it could be answered so you don't miss any of these episodes. Addiction is it's deeply human, and so is the
Mhm.
recovery. And today's episode is a powerful conversation about a couple who works in addiction recovery, sharing insight, compassion, bringing love and support that make lasting changes for what people desire or want in their life. And you know we don't talk about it from a place of judgment. We talk about a place from just expanding the knowledge, the understanding, and um, creating a frequency to say, hey, I'd like to know a little bit more about this, because maybe we don't know enough about it. And it's not just drugs and alcohol, it's about
Mhm.
how we live our life. And if we really step back and look at our life, we're like, ooh, I think I have a few addictions and I didn't realize it. And then we're learning a little bit about the dopamine serotonin roller coaster, and you know, neurodivergence and all these other things that are coming up that we really need to expand and bring awareness to the audience and others who might be listening, whether you're directly affected by someone who has something more debilitating, such as, drug or alcohol, or they're struggling with, any other kind of addiction that is will rear its ugly head. I know for me, when I gave up alcohol in 2017, it was for anti-inflammatory.
Mm.
And next thing I know, I'm grocery shopping as I always do, and I'm really drawn to the bakery aisle, and I can't get out of it. And then I'm
Yeah.
like, oh no, I don't no, I don't want that cake. And I would go a couple hours over, but in my head it was going, oh yeah, you want that cake? Yes, you do. And then I found myself strolling back, and I'd say, no, I don't. And next thing I know, it'd be in my cart. Then the next day I'd say, no, you're not going to do that again. And then I realized after a few weeks, holy moly, I let go of one thing, but now
Mhm.
it led me to a deeper path of understanding some of the things that created for me. So I didn't see that I actually what the underlying root cause of a possible addiction
Yeah.
was and is. So it led me down a whole different path. So Jason and Heather, oh my gosh, I want to thank you so much for spending some time with us on this Sunday. Let's just dive in. What can we share with our audience about what you guys do, and a little more about addiction and anything else that's coming through for you?
Yeah, totally. I first I just want to say thank you for having us back. And I mean, this conversation really is so important because I love that you said it's just a deeply human challenge that anybody that's in a body has some type of way that they cope with stress. I mean, we get patterned at such an early age. And I think to take away the stigma is such an important thing. Because what I think we've both experienced coming out of very fundamental religious background, a lot of times in those environments, we don't even see the things that we are addicted to because we label certain things addictions and maybe bypass and don't even acknowledge that there might be other things like you just said. And so I think it's something that well, no, I think it touches all of us in one way, shape, or form for sure.
We're so one mind.
Yeah.
I love it. I had this like when I heard you say addiction is deeply human, I too was like, oh, beautifully said,
Yeah.
Sandra. And thank you. Thank you for having us on your podcast and
Mm.
having this really human conversation,
Hmm.
very real conversation. And I know just for those listeners, when Sandra and the two of us get together, we don't plan anything. We just really go, oh, okay, hi, let's go.
Yeah.
And so there's no preparation. So my hope and prayer, and I just want to speak this and then really invoke this space that what we
Hmm.
share here has practical poignancy and power for you in your life.
Yes.
Because addiction is a chronic problem that many are experiencing, whether you're aware of it or not. And I think I really appreciate what you said, Sandra, because like what we find out, because we work in residential treatment, so we're really dealing with some high acute disease, right? Some
Hmm.
high acute problems and very high levels of trauma and high levels of mental health. But when you start uncovering the substance abuse, whether it's fentanyl or drugs or alcohol or any of that, then you go, wait a second, maybe there's pornography. Oh, wait a second, maybe there's codependency. I mean, most of our clients in these homes, you cut out the substance and they're addicted to sugar. They can't get enough sugar, and
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff. It's like there's just so much layers of ultimately what it is. I mean, I've come to understand, I think it was through the
Mm-hmm.
Course of Miracles, if you're familiar with that, was that really there's really only one ultimate traumatic problem. And that
Mm-hmm.
ultimate traumatic problem is we think we're separate from whatever you want to
Source,
call
yeah.
God, source, universal love,
Mm-hmm.
and when we believe we're separate, we do all kinds of interesting things to feel okay, to feel comforted, to feel like a warm blanket, as opioids do.
Yeah.
And we're just longing for love. We're longing for connection through unskillful ways. And so, getting to the place where all of us can just go, because I mean, let's be honest, this time on planet Earth is very challenging. It's very uncomfortable. You don't feel safe a lot of times. Your nervous system is highly reactive. And in that fear, fight, freeze, fawn, whatever that is, you're perceiving from the lenses is I'm not okay. And so I got to
Mm-hmm.
find a way to be okay, whether it's bread, whether it's doom scrolling through social media, or whatever escape mechanisms you're using. So, it is a very human thing. We're all struggling to find our sense of peace, serenity, in the now moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very well said. And the more I've been, Spirit's been, unfolding this topic of addiction, I've been things just pop up or are shared with me out of the blue. It's amazing how Spirit just brings all that forth. And I'm in a conversation with someone and I'm learning. And, it's not like someone intentionally went out and said, I'm just looking for a high. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just looking for a high. They're actually they're looking for normalcy because somewhere in some mechanism, mentally, physically, emotionally, there's a disconnect and they're
Mm-hmm.
not feeling connected. They're not feeling what they perceive as being, normal. So they're looking for things. And yes, of course, we're patterned as children. We're patterned by so many things. And then to come to the realization that, like for me with the sugar, was, oh, I need to repattern. And one of the things that I started doing, I mean, it took me down a hole. I mean, it had, I said, oh my gosh, I've got a demon. This
Mm,
is overpowering me. I had
Totally.
no clue that
Mm-hmm.
this had such a strong hold on me. And in 2017, when I really started, you know, down the no alcohol out of choice, and then finding this underlying whoa,
Mm-hmm.
I started having a lot more compassion for those people who struggled with
Totally.
addictions. And I went, oh, I fail all the time. Every other week, I'm great. And every other week, I'm like, oh, crap, what did I do that for? And
Yeah.
I'm in this constant start over, do over, forgive myself, let it
Mm-hmm.
go. Um, and we don't realize the brain chemistry and physical chemistry that's changes just from sugar. I can
yeah.
only imagine the altered states that we get from medications and heavy alcohol and other things that bring people to that particular addiction. But I know for me, I had to start eating protein or something before I went to the store. And I had to have a self conversation before I walked in there because I went, oh, I will get a hold of this.
Mm-hmm.
And I still go back and forth. I still, here we are, Thomas, 10
Of
years
course.
later. And and just last week I was at the Amish market and just one of those donuts looked so inviting. I went, I'll just take a half a dozen. And I did.
Yeah.
And I ate one. And the next morning I woke up and I looked at the other five and I went, oh no,
Yeah.
you're not staying. I'm not eating you just because I spent a lot of money on you. I
Yeah.
can't share you because that's just plain, I'm poisoning someone else.
Mm,
Can't
Right.
do it.
mhm.
And in the trash they went. And not only in the trash did they go, they went downstairs to the garage to the big trash can.
Yeah. Totally.
Because if this one got crazy, she would dig right in there later, get it back
Oh,
out.
Oh,
girl, I'm
so
with
make
you. For me, it really manifested. And Food was probably my first addiction growing up. It was a way that I was able to self-regulate. And if we really, start peeling back kind of just the science of all of it, it is about our nervous systems. And several years ago, I created a program called Sing Your Soul Awake, and it was really based on the seven chakras. And I began to really dive into the 7 year developmental cycles, and that when there are unresolved issues in any of those 7 year cycles, anything that's above it will be in trying to counterbalance what is out of balance underneath it, right? So when we're looking at that first 7 year cycle and pre-birth from and 0 to 7, if there is, and I would say most of us have this, there's a fear and shame basis of some kind where very early on we learned what displeased mom and dad, what we got in trouble for, where we lost love, where we got corrected. So we learned how to adapt to keep our nervous system regulated. And then you go into the 7 to 14 and how the sexual exploration kind of starts to come in, and we're aware of our emotions and that we're separate. So all of these understanding that there's something very logical happening inside of our body, and that every time we reach for some kind of something to help regulate and soothe, it's evidence of a longing and a craving for the real thing, and understanding how each of those 7 year cycles manifest and govern different aspects of our lives really starts to take away the stigma, because we all have it. I would say one of our biggest addictions at this point on our planet is scrolling. We are constantly in a place, it's pulling us out of our center, and allowing fear and doubt and concern and division to come in. So,
Hmm. Yeah, it's I love it. We're keeping it spiritually simple, but we're talking about the chakra system, and we're talking about psycho-spiritual
mhm,
healing, right? Because it is as psychological as the beauty, but when the chakras in the three lower chakras
mhm,
become infested or not, flowing in a beautiful way, we can't access the heart in a really true way. And
mhm,
so what happens if the three lower chakras are not clean and clear? A lot of us, especially, and this is what I wanted to presence, that one of the other addictions that we're not aware of and we kind of don't look at is our spiritual bypassing, and where we
totally.
we get addicted to the high
Yeah.
of contacting higher intelligence, right? But if those three lower chakras aren't really clean and clear, and you haven't done your deep shadow work and you haven't done your deep integration, these are distorted. You
Mm-hmm.
think you're seeing something, but you might have a distortional eye, right? If your first eye is if pure, then the whole body is pure. But these three lowers, and we talk about sex, money, and power,
Mm-hmm.
those three lower chakras, so that's where a lot of our addiction work, and where, yeah, we need to bridge. I was not okay in my three lower chakras for a long time in my life. I had a porn addiction. I had a codependency addiction. I wasn't okay in my body. But so I didn't really access those things when my early awakening, and I started accessing, channels. I felt like I was getting, I'm a human angel. I'm an angel on the planet. I've got this connection with Michael, and I've got this, and yes, and it could be there, but there's a lot of distortion in there. And so we want to bridge in our recovery work, bridge the divine and the human. And it's been a beautiful journey for us in the last three
Mm-hmm.
years, Sandra, to really get human
Yeah.
and bridge that
Mm-hmm.
divine, that divinity in all of it, loving all of it, saying, yes, it's
Mm-hmm.
okay. It's okay. We're learning to reparent ourselves where those 0 to 7, 14 to 21, you know, that those eras and years, there wasn't a good adult maybe in some of us.
Mm-hmm.
I know I didn't. I had parents that weren't really healthy fully and not spiritually connected at all. So your nervous system is learning how to fight for survival
Mm-hmm.
and coping mechanisms and various things. So, I love the Sing Your Soul Awake. I've seen it really impact people, but
Mm-hmm.
having the space to go in there, you need care, you need compassion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, those are all really powerful things, and talking about that birth through 7 years, are you
Mm-hmm.
truly accepted by your parents in those moments. And it goes back further than that, before conception. What were their thoughts? What were their food habits?
Yeah.
What was their lifestyle? All kinds of things. Um, but that 1 through 7 and then 7 through 14 are so critical because it forms us more
Hmm.
so than we realize. And, we get into, the religious aspect of it, and we're taught everything's outside of us. You have to go
Yes.
through a third party for
Yep.
everything. And
Mhm.
for me as a kid, it never made sense. But for many, like my mother, that's what you did. And so her
Mhm.
religion, that was her spirituality. So if she was to miss church or not do something that followed the rules,
Mhm.
then she was in that blame, shame, guilt feelings. And
Mhm.
just a couple weeks ago, I went to a Sunday morning Pilates class and I got out and the girl goes, I really so enjoyed that, but I skipped church for this. I feel guilty. And I went, well, maybe your Pilates class was your church. Did you
Mm.
ask yourself what your body needed? Because maybe it just needed to be here
Yeah,
today.
totally.
And she sort of looked at me with that, oh, oh, okay, well, I'll think about that.
Permission.
Mm.
Yeah, it's so important to remember that. I mean, we are carrying that with us, that holiness with us wherever we go. We are it. We're not separate from it ever. And there's no place we could go to. There's no specific practice that we could engage in that is going to make that any more true. It just is. I think part of that is, the addiction we have, I would say, just along the lines of what you were saying, babe, is that we can get as addicted to our spiritual seeking as anything else, because a lot of times it feels like we're trying to get to heaven, get out of our body, get to the after reward kind of a thing. And that in our bodies, because of religious programming, a lot of times it's rooted in guilt and shame, and you almost can't escape the psychology of that, how that just subtly impacts us. And so we're always performing spirituality, but never actually embodying the spirit that is innately in all of us. And it keeps that ache alive so deeply, know?
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very well said. What would actually help people begin to recover? Do they have to first uncover what could possibly be an addiction? I mean, I know people who are just addicted to their schedule. If their schedule is not scheduled and they are on track, they will literally glitch.
Hmm.
If people don't eat at a certain time, they will
Hmm.
just lose their crap, right? And so these are all forms of control and addiction. And,
Hmm.
it's sort of like that at 4 o'clock, oh, I got to have that cup of coffee because, I just got to have it. And you don't realize that's a form of addiction.
Hmm.
There's all these simple things as humans that we're living, that we've developed these habits and patterns. And we just, so many of them, we get, oh, that's okay. And that
Hmm.
one's not so bad. And that one's okay. And I have control over it. So I'm good. So what would you say to, like, would people have to stop a behavior before they heal? Would they have to really dive into, geez, where do I maybe have some addiction?
Hmm.
Great
Yeah, it's a really good
question.
question.
I think, Bill W., founder of the 12-step movement, was good friends. And before he really, crystallized these 12 steps, he had a lot of conversations with some very wise spiritual beings.
Hmm.
One of them being Carl Jung,
Hmm.
um, Ernest Holmes. These were, people that were he was around. And these 12 steps are an alchemical. I think we might have touched on this a little bit in the last one, but the first step to recovery is first of all awareness.
Hmm.
It's not going to be, I just want to stop. I mean, I think that's going to come, but awareness of like, how is this affecting my life? How is this affecting my relationships? How is this affecting my sense of peace of mind? How is this, am I aware of this thing, this momentary pleasure that has a long-term negative effect? And so having some awareness and some inventory of going, okay, what's going on in my life? I think that's the first thing we have to do. That's why it's the first step is I've come to understand that I'm powerless over blank. You know, I came to understand my codependency patterns is I am powerless over the expectations of people who
Mm,
say they love me. If you love me, then you're going to do A, B, and C. And if you don't do A, B, and C, you really don't love me. And so it creates a codependent. And so becoming aware of going, oh, I need a power greater than myself to help me deal with my powerlessness over my ability to pick
mm,
up, to do this thing. And so becoming aware, I would say for me,
mm,
is the first step. And as teaching a young 16-year-old, my son to drive, I came with the phrase awareness is key.
mm.
Where are you? Like when you go to the mall and you want to get to somewhere, that big giant mall, what do? You look for the sign that says, you are here. When you know where you are really in reality, in your live stream and what's going on, now you have a choice. Now you have a choice to do something. You have a choice to take a different path. But without awareness of what's really going on, because we don't want to look at the things in our life. We don't want to look because why? It brings up the lowest frequency we could possibly have, guilt and
Oh,
shame. And if we're dealing with guilt and shame, where do we go? We go to that river in Egypt, right? Denial. We go in
yeah.
denial. We don't have a problem. But until you become aware that there is something you need to look at, no one can tell you anything
Yeah.
until you see it for yourself.
Yeah, I would love to piggyback off of that a little bit. I think that with that awareness, there has to be a choice. We go through the stages of change with our clients often. A lot of times there's a stage called pre-contemplation that lasts for a long time. It's like you might recognize that there's an issue. You might recognize that something, you're feeling like I can't keep sustaining this in my life. It's becoming unmanageable. It's affecting my relationships. It's affecting everything. And a lot of times people will stay there for a long time. And then they move into contemplation where they start to entertain, like, okay, what do I need to do about this? Because everything is falling apart. Life is demanding that I actually start looking at what I need to do. And that stage can last for a little while too. And then people go into more of an action phase where they start going, I'm going to call, I'm going to get help, I'm going to reach out, I'm going to go to an AA meeting, whatever the thing is. But it's like we have to name, like Jason said, the problem. And the first thing that happens a lot of times when clients come in our settings, and we've both done this in our groups outside of treatment as well, that the first invitation for that bottom root system is the invitation to stillness.
Mm.
Because most of us have never learned how to be okay in the stillness. Because when we stop outrunning all of those things we've been avoiding, it can be horrifying at first, right? And that second center, that second stage is learning that it is necessary to feel all of it and to not run. And that's what requires support a lot of times because we have not been trained. When we've been reaching for things to calm all of the things we don't want to feel and trying to feel the way we do want to feel. When those things start to come up, it does feel like a certain type of death.
Mm.
It's like death to all the things that the structures we've created in our life. And so that's what we start with meditation and journaling and prayer with these clients who, for the first time in maybe their lifetime, have been sober enough, even for a week, to start to feel the little gap between what they've been out running and what's real.
Mm-hmm. So,
Well said. Yes. Thank you for sharing that. A couple of things that were coming up for me recently was, well, what's the difference between an obsession and an addiction?
Ooh.
And so I started kind of muddling around with that one morning. I went, well, spirit, to me, like an obsession would be something I'll get over. It's a kind of a phase, right? Like oh, I'm just obsessed with this, and then you overdo it till you're sick of it, and then you go on maybe to the next one. An addiction to me would be something that's this underlying,
Hmm.
steady little hey, hey. And yeah, did I do that one? I did that pretty well, didn't
I love the sound
I?
effects.
Yeah, I know, right. And then, I was also thinking about like, what would be the difference between coping and numbing?
Mm,
And so what could you share about those things?
great question. You want to share first?
You go.
Well, When I think about an obsession, and like you said, I think obsessions kind of come and go in stages, similar to how different addictions meet different needs at different points of our life. Because I know that, like you said earlier, it moved from alcohol to now there's, this underlying thing. An addiction is a well-rooted pattern that has carved out physiological neural pathways inside of us that now in order for us to feel regulated again, it has to be fed. So an obsession may come and go. We may be obsessed with, whatever it is. It could be exercise for all that we know, anything. But that when that groove is strong enough, you can't just get out, which is why it's cunning and baffling, because now it has residence inside of your being, and it's these roads that get carved out even in our neural pathways. They don't just change unless we learn something new and try things that we haven't even done before, which starts to rewire those neural networks. So I love that so much of what's helped us, I think, ground a lot of this is realizing the physiology behind this and demystify the cunning and baffling part and not just relegate it to, well, what do I need to do in a program? Because if I can see my body is doing something, a natural response to the things that I keep doing, it gives me some choice that maybe I don't have, rather than just going, I need to follow this spiritual program. Do you see what I'm saying? Like there can be so much frustration when we don't understand just the simple physiology of it.
Yeah, I think obsession just leads to addiction simply. Like
Yeah.
it can, addiction is the thing you can't stop doing. Obsession may begin like, oh, I'm obsessed with working out. Let's use that example.
Mhm.
I just want to lose 25 pounds. And
Right.
well, why? Because I don't like what I'm looking in the mirror.
Mm.
Or maybe it's just I'm obsessed with being healthy because I'm passionate. Now, where's passion and obsession and addiction, does it become passion can be good, but when it becomes obsession, it becomes there's this disturbance. If you look into obsessions, like I'm disturbed in some capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And if I keep going after this obsession,
Mm.
it might lead to an addiction that I can't stop the thing that I was
Can't
obsessed
live
with,
without, yeah.
right?
Mm.
And a coping mechanism, I mean, that can be a healthy thing. A coping mechanism, like, okay, the
Coping
breath,
skill.
with coping skill, coping mechanism. I'm disturbed, my anxious, my nervous system's okay. We often say take 6 deep belly breaths. That's a good coping mechanism, coping skill,
Skill, yeah.
right? It's a mechanism, skill mechanism. I feel like it's language, right? So
Yeah.
it's to numb.
Mm.
There are coping mechanisms we do to numb.
Mhm.
Because I'm not comfortable. We just had a client, my heart goes out to her. We couldn't even touch in 30 days the grief that this young woman has gone through, lost so many people, and she just keeps a smile, and that's her coping mechanism. Everything's cool, everything's light, but she's not able to stop the addiction. She's just skirting through the surface, and until you get the courage to change the things you can, to go into that and going, okay, how am I going to deal with grief in a healthy coping way?
Mhm.
Um, and That's a great question, though. I love
Yeah.
that.
When I think of coping strategies too, I think of coping strategies include feeling all of it. Numbing is trying to erase the feeling, because it's, when we start feeling, that's when fear comes up. That's when it starts to feel, like it's going to cost a lot to actually move through this stuff. And so I think the numbing is that's what we do when we don't want to feel. And there is an alchemizing process that cannot be shortcut. You got to feel what you're not wanting to feel. And the amazing part of that is, and I feel like I've learned this deeper in the last year, is that is where spirit actually meets us. There is a verse that I always kind of just have in the back of my mind that talks about, I asked God, spirit, source, whatever, this thing I have, this thorn in my flesh that is constant, and it's this pain that I constantly have. And I asked for it to be removed. And what the response was from the divine is that my grace is sufficient for you, because my power, the power that's inside of you, is perfected in your weakness.
Yeah.
So I will boast about my weaknesses, that the power of the living Christ, the
Mm.
light, would dwell in me. That's where heaven meets earth, and we really begin to see that God will do for us what we can't do for ourselves. And when I say God, I'm this mirror that we're living in, right? This relationship that is unbreakable when we really realize it, but we have to invite it and we have to allow it to meet us in those places that are aching the deepest.
And I just want to preface for when, listeners who are listening, when we say God, God's a short phrase and we can say many different things, but for us, it's really clear. It's love.
Mm-hmm.
It's the power of love.
Mm-hmm.
Thus you're talking to the powers of love. This energy, this frequency, this reality
Mm-hmm.
behind all the illusions of what you perceiving is, there's a power of love that's so ready to pour into you. And Rumi said, the wound is where the light gets in,
Yes,
right?
yes,
And
yes.
so when we presence with such great love and acceptance and compassion and support, we need support. We need friends. We need community to go to some of these tough places. But that is when we surrender to that, then we tap into something that is so beyond what we can even put in words. But I love that you said brilliant coping strategies. It reminded me of my favorite book on recovery. It's called Conscious Recovery by a gentleman named TJ Woodward. I highly invite you guys to read this book because it helps those who are maybe listening, struggling with addiction to understand it's a fresh perspective on addiction. But it's like, yeah, your brain has a immune system.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it taps into some overwhelming trauma, some thoughts, some feelings, it just says, no, we're not going there.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to disassociate, we're going to cut off, and we're going to do something to feel better because right now that's too dangerous for us.
Mm-hmm.
So addiction is a brilliant coping strategy for a moment until it's not.
Yeah. Yes. Great point.
Until it's not. And then we go,
Mm-hmm.
I want something more.
Mm-hmm.
I want to feel okay. I want to have better connections. I want to keep the jobs that I'm having. I want to be reliable. I want to have a great marriage. I want to have a great
Mm-hmm.
relationship. I want to be there for my kids. I want life. I don't want the false life anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Well said.
I think too, also everybody's rock bottom is different. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I like the beauty of, the vulnerability is when you really start to shed the layers, when you can really just be in that vulnerability. Um, it's not hopelessness, it's not helplessness, it's not, a place of it's so shameful to be there because now I got to reach out and ask for help. Those are the times when we get sometimes the best responses, when we can finally accept the fact that we do need to reach out, that we need to be
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable in something that, maybe someone else is stronger in, and we need that strength to lean on. And I know that, there's a lot of patterns that get people stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of this is the frequencies. And I know that we touched base on this before too, I think. And that is that a lot of the stuff is deliberately placed out into our frequencies. Okay. We can do
Yes.
a whole topic on that. The other
Yes.
night I woke up, I was having conversations, ridiculousness going on in my head. And after like 2 hours of tossing and turning, I sat up and I went, whoa, none of this means anything to anything
Mhm.
to anything. Shut it down.
Yeah.
Right? Because it starts to take, it gets gasoline, it gets more fuel the longer you stay in it. But I
Yeah.
was tossing just enough that I was like, whoa, hold up a second.
Mm-hmm.
Let me put the brakes on this runaway train, because this is where the frequencies I
Mm-hmm.
knew were interfering. And I was like, okay, spirit, I'm going to need you to come in. Let's silence those frequencies. Let me reconnect to the heart, the breath, my love, for myself, my respect for my sleep, my awareness that this wasn't me and didn't need to stay in my presence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it was going to affect me physically, mentally, and emotionally the next day at work. That's
Mm-hmm.
not cool. That's
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
harmful when I'm going to be like, sorry, I had a shitty night's sleep and I'm just going to be
Totally.
in a bad mood. That to me is not acceptable. And
Mm-hmm.
so, we get people that are in these positions where they're not realizing that, and I don't want to use words that have labels, but there are Malevolent situations purposely placed in your track every single day that get you off cue and off kilter and away from your sense of stability and love.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, we could have a whole show about frequency.
Yeah.
That's my love language.
Yeah, for sure.
It is, I take our clients to those levels of understanding. You talk about Dr. David Hawkins' work, right? Power versus force. And you start understanding your emotional, intelligence. You understand emotions carry a frequency. Your thoughts, you can heal your life with your thoughts, with the thing you're thinking. So that's all, as Tesla lovingly reminds us, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think of frequency, vibration, and energy. And so, I just recently shared with our clients, this is like something I'm just grateful to understand and understand. But Greg Braden, he talks a lot about Heart Math Institute. And Greg Braden, if you don't know who he is, look his work up. But he talks a lot about heart-brain coherence. And then even Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about becoming superhuman. So I told my clients, I said, you guys want to learn how to become superhuman today? All right, so here's what we're going to do. And we're going to learn a very practical skill to raise your frequency, your brainwave state to point 0.1 gamma brainwave state. So once you access gamma, and our humans, we can, but a lot of times we're in high beta and we're in fight, flight, freeze. We're just constantly, and we're time traveling to the past or the future, and we're just not settled into our body system. So we don't have access to inspiration, intuition. Our body chemicals are not allowing it to breathe and heal. And so raising your frequency, whatever you can do, it could be as simple as heart-brain coherent activity. 3 minutes, 5 minutes, of putting your hand on your heart, put your hand on your belly, come into that awareness, and then start taking 5 counts of 5 breaths. Think about what you care about, what you're grateful for, what you're compassionate to, self-compassion, and do that for, like, you'll actually go into 0.1 frequency. You'll start, and if you make a practice of that, raise your frequency, raise your life, period. However that looks, and yes, be aware you're an antenna. So what we got to do in recovery is clean and clear our antenna, our body system, right? Which goes back to Sing Your Soul Awake. If you're clearing out your energy centers, you become a pure vessel, and you can discern through the samsara, through the illusion, the delusions, the misinformation, malinformation, and what you consume. If you're consuming horror movies all the time, if you're consuming content that's always putting you in fight, flight, freeze, go be aware. How does this make me feel when I listen to Metallica? How does this make me feel when I listen to, music that actually is frequentially designed to make your body system feel good?
Yeah.
I've always got frequency playing. Every group, I'm always beginning with
Music.
432, some kind of frequency that kind of makes the space feel good, whether they're aware of it or not, because it does play a factor.
Yeah, it really does. I think just, the agenda to get our heart, well, our heart being our body, our mind cut off from our body has been so great, because a lot of times, just coming back into our bodies, like Jason said, there's so many ways that we can do it. I think that's why people are having such great results with cold plunging, or, any type of exercise, especially if it's out in nature where you're connecting in your body in real time. It really significantly decreases the rumination factor, because once the rumination starts, it too is creating a neural pathway that it is set. It's easy to go back to that. And the algorithms are so trained. Whatever our unique fear is, whatever our unique anger is, wherever we are tempted to be divided, the algorithms are so dialed into each one of us. And I hear more and more people kind of popping out going, this is ridiculous. This is all fake, all of it. And it doesn't have any bearing on my day-to-day life. How do I feel in my body? How am I doing in my relationships? How well am I loving the life that I've been blessed with? I think that is the solution. And I think, just starting there to help people know it's safe to be here now. Present moment awareness. And that often has been the scariest place for people to be. And so just bringing people to a place where they can just start there, that they realize that they are co-creating their experience and they do have a choice. Many
Mhm.
people just don't even know that there's a choice.
Well, and we have these multiple pedals in the brain and the body that have us going, going, stop, go, 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 stop, backwards, backwards,
Yeah.
backwards. So we're avoiding. Some people don't even know how to sit still
Mhm.
for just even 2 minutes because in the mind's like to do, to do, to do. They're not taking the time to say, hey, I'm going to carve out just 5 minutes, even if it's at work and I got to go into the toilet and leave my phone at my desk. I'm just going to
Mhm.
sit here and
Mhm.
I'm going to just release some debris. I'm going to breathe through it. I'm going to bring my shoulders back down to some kind of some kind of better level than around my ears,
Mhm.
which opens up the throat, which opens up the heart, which opens up the abdominal area. There's so many little things that we can do. What could you all suggest for people to just maybe start learning how to be in the present moment? Like, how would you identify it? I mean, I know how I've trained myself, you
Mhm.
know, for a very long time, but
Mhm.
I'm interested in hearing how you all would share that.
Yeah. The first thing I'm going to say is I think that there is a beautiful space for guided meditation at first, because I don't think people don't easily just go from have outrunning their life to just being in the silence. I remember early in my awakening, 5 minutes felt like 5 lifetimes. And so, giving small, and that's kind of what we do is we start people out with guided meditations. It'll be like 5 to 8 minutes in the morning and just learning to sit still, even if there's still, sound going on. A lot of people have never just sat still. That's where we generally help people start if they don't have a practice at all of that.
Yeah, I think find a spot, get to a
Hmm.
park, go
Hmm.
watch the birds, put your back against a tree, get your feet on the earth, set your timer on your phone for 5 minutes. Find a space where you can just be with nature if
Hmm.
that because it gives you something just to
Hmm.
observe and just observe. Just be in the observer for a moment
Totally.
because we're in the reactor most of the time or the projector and just be in that space of observing. Like I just recently put a little bird feeder outside. So every morning I sit and I look at the little sparrows come,
Hmm.
and it just brings me such joy just to witness the birds, and I heard that phrase, look at the birds of the air.
Yeah.
Look how your heavenly Father feeds them. I'm like, I'm the heavenly Father feeding the birds. And
So precious.
it's the most, finding joy, but and I want to presence this because this is coming through. So there's this thing called
Hmm.
anhedonia that is a
Hmm.
phrase that we've come to understand that when our our receptors are fried from too much dopamine,
Hmm.
when we fry them. And so anhedonia is just the inability to experience joy.
Hmm.
And so because, just sitting looking at birds, they're hearing, Jason, I can't do that. That's boring. I need to like have some activity. And so I'm an adrenaline seeking. I'm looking for
Hmm.
constant high,
Hmm.
constant increase because we know addiction starts subtle and then it gets more and it gets more and it gets more because your brain receptors are getting fried from too much activity. But if you can just take a space and make it intentional, just to be, and I've shared this with the clients. Like once you taste that for a second, if you can
Hmm.
really get, as I heard Dr. Wayne Dyer talking about getting into the gap, once you get into the gap of no thought, you get into
Hmm.
that space, that empty space where you get that, it almost feels like a second wind, or it feels like
Hmm.
I can almost taste it. Like there's something you hit and it's like, oh, I want more of that.
Totally.
And if you can give yourself the gift of just being, I mean, I meditated for the first time, I wept because I had to leave the Christian church. I had no contact with God or any of that. When I meditated for the first time, I'm like, there you are, God. You're in my private bedroom with some music and Nag Champa. And I'm like, oh my God, you've always been here. And I can access you in the bathroom at work. I can access you in the car when I'm driving to work. I can access you when I put my feet on the ground in the morning
Hmm.
and I'm tasting that. Once you taste the real high,
Hmm.
the fake highs go away. That's the thing. Is like we don't want to resist I'm reaching for something for a reason, but if you reach for the real, the old will fall away over time. You just don't
Mhm.
have a desire for it because you've tasted the real.
Mhm.
And that can be as simple as just 5 minutes, just breathing, looking at birds.
Yeah, totally. I love that you mentioned boredom because I think that becomes a barrier for a lot of us when because we're not used to being bored. Bored can be a real trigger for people. And learning that boredom actually has one of the greatest gifts. I mean, that
Hmm.
is that, it is in that stillness, in that silence, but everything inside of us will fight it. And I think I love just being out, out in nature, but allow yourself to be bored because peace will feel boring if you've been used to constantly reaching for things. And it's a new, calibrating that needs to happen inside for you to be okay and know that that's actually a very natural part of our humanity is boredom. It's a gift, quite a gift.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I think many of us being adrenaline junkies and not realizing it, that we're always in stimulants. We always need the stimulants. We have stimulants even subliminally behind
Yeah.
us. We have it through our foods. We have it through electronics. We have it through our lifestyle, our got to do, 10 and 2, got to go, more, more, more. Multitasking is a great talent, isn't it? Right. So, I mean, I'm just saying we have all that. And it's like eating spicy food. It's like it burns the crap out of your tongue and your throat. And
Yes.
then over the years, you continue to eat it, and then you need something a higher spice and a higher spice. And it's not because your taste buds aren't there, it's that they've been retarded. They've
Yeah.
had layers put on them. And so when you start to back up a little bit, then you realize there's your taste buds, just like God, there you are. You were always
Yeah.
there. I was just putting all these barriers between us,
Yeah.
me and source, or life and source, because we are intentionally being placed into being busy, 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 so that we're not taking that stop, drop, sit, connect with the breath,
Hmm.
let go of the 10 and 2, and
Hmm.
just surrender to rejuvenating. And you can look at it in so many different ways so that you don't feel like you're abandoning your list. You can just say, in order for me to get to there, I need to step back and
Hmm.
give a little something here. In order for
Yeah.
me to give to them, I got to step back and give a
Yeah.
little something to here. And in those moments, the more that you do them is the high you're talking about and that
Mm.
feeling that you're talking about. And then
Mhm.
you begin to say, you know what? I'm going to take a little bit more time. I'm going to,
Mhm.
for me, I can't sit in front of my laptop watching a show and having my phone next to me because now I'm doing two things. And
Mhm.
then sometimes I pause that and I'm scrolling through this for 20 minutes and going,
Mhm.
this is ridiculous. I literally have to take the phone across the room,
Yeah.
plug it in somewhere else, or shut it down because
Mhm.
it's creating this adrenaline craziness that's frying the brain. And the other thing I was hearing you say is we need to create some new neural pathways.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we don't do that without doing new things. It's very basic. A lot of the we have a week of responsibility in the work that we do. The whole theme of that week is responsibility. And one of the things we do is taking responsibility for our education and learning new things and expanding our horizons because that's when we really start carving out those new neural pathways that rewire naturally and heal those parts of us that have those really deep grooves that replay the addictive cravings, right? It's so important. I just wanted to tap back into what you were saying earlier about self-love. I think for me, a lot of the people that I speak with, that is such an amorphous concept. The idea, what does it mean to love yourself? You know? Um, I think it's probably the most profound question we can really ask ourselves to really learn what we want and need because a lot of times when we've been outpacing our life, we don't even know. It's just kind of a nebulous kind of a thing. What am I really wanting and what am I really needing? And to start providing those things for ourselves because we love each other as good as we love ourselves. And we tolerate, from others what we tolerate within ourselves. And I think that when we're looking at being the change in the world that we all want to see, learning how to love ourselves and know that that divine, as Jesus says, if the Father is in me as I'm in the Father, there's no separation. When I start loving this, knowing that this is God here, man, amazing things are afoot for us if we can really get a hold of that in communities. And yeah.
Mm. I just have the song Nature Boy in my head right now. It's the end of Moulin Rouge. John Leguizamo says, "What's the meaning of life? To love and be loved." That is it. That is all that we're trying to do and try to figure out. That's what I became really clear in my recovery myself, is that I want to increase the capacity to love and be loved, you know? And love sometimes, a lot of times, is a no.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
No to that toxic relationship, no to that toxic engagement, no to this job that's sucking the life out of me. I want to love myself enough and to go after what it is, really be around, be in a marriage, be in a relationship, being with
Mm-hmm.
friends who support you and don't always tear you down, you know. So increasing the capacity to love and be loved, is ultimately what we're trying to do here, right?
Yeah, totally. And that naturally brings in alignments in our lives that bring in, you know, greater opportunities, better relationships. It just naturally starts clicking into place. And I love that that's what our clients start to see while they're with us is the little synchronicities showing up when they're learning how to come back here.
Hmm.
It's so magical. It
Yeah.
really, it's a
And you're
gift.
talking about what Heather's just presencing there is a law. It's a law.
Mm-hmm.
There's a law of love. There's a law of one. There's a law of attraction. There's a law of coherency. There's a law of
Mm-hmm.
harmony. And we can call that those universal laws. We didn't do anything. We didn't create that. Well, we tap into the law of how things work of cause and effect. When I do this, this happens. Okay, maybe if I change this and I create different engagement, this will happen. And you start becoming a scientist looking at your life. Just research it, look at it, like what, and take a really good
Mm-hmm.
assessment. Is this the most loving thing I can be doing right now? Instead of
Mm-hmm.
what would Jesus do, what would love do?
Totally.
WWLD.
Totally.
Well, when you were, Heather, when you were saying, people don't know how to love themselves,
Mm-hmm.
it just brings up, I don't know, I just had this flood coming through my body. It's like, oh, I just want people to feel that. I just, to
Mm-hmm.
feel that is amazing because your whole life evolves differently from that place. And everything starts to repattern and behavior begins to
Yeah.
change when you
Yeah.
have the love within yourself. And, if you want to see the change in the world, be it,
Yes.
right? So, one of the questions I wanted to ask you was what advice would you give someone who loves a person who is struggling through addiction?
Mm,
It's a great question.
it's
That was
a
it.
deep one.
I remember I was actually having this thought because, you know, twofold, if I could, real quick. Bobby Kennedy and in the administration has put $100 million into our nation on recovery, which is a
Mhm.
beautiful thing. And the message that they're giving is that we got to look at it as
Mm.
not a shame. It's not a moral issue.
Mhm.
They're bringing the lens from the top, here in the governance of understanding in infusing energy in the form of money into programs, but to an awareness that it's not a moral issue,
Mhm.
and it invites more compassion.
Mhm.
Um, there's a great movie that Winona Ryder, how do you say that name?
Winona.
Winona Ryder. She did a great movie that has I can't remember her name, Bill W.'s wife. It's escaping me, but it's about how Al-Anon got created.
Yes.
And,
Yes. Yes.
her as a wife dealing with this alcoholic, Bill W., and his
Mhm.
notorious, it's a great movie, by the way,
Mm.
worth a watch. But you get to see how Al-Anon got created to
Mhm.
understand, like, that's a whole nother addiction
Totally.
that serves those that are struggling. So, you know, if you've got somebody in your life that is struggling, and it's heart-wrenching,
Yeah.
it's disappointing, it's terrifying. because you don't know. They could kill themselves. They could kill another, drunk driving. They could, or the sex is their addiction. They keep cheating on you. It hurts. You as the person who's affected, your feelings matter. Your experience matters. So first of all, that's important. That's very real. But bringing some understanding and compassion. And you can see when you go into like, well, maybe I have fears. Maybe I'm not okay. Maybe I do want to control everything in my life and I'm not feeling safe and I don't have a connection to a higher power of my understanding. And, my trust in life isn't good. So it can cause you to go into your own internal world. But going back to what you said, if you want to make, let's say, the world or the person a better place, a better person, take a look at yourself and make some changes. Because if you change the way that you operate and engage with this person or this condition, you might be amazed at what's going to happen. Because as one goes, goes the collective, as a dear friend of ours would say.
Yeah, it's really true. I think the root of these dynamics, you got to look at the whole family and the role that everybody is experiencing and playing unconsciously. And like Jason said, just get help for yourself first. If especially, if the other person is in a stage of pre-contemplation or is not even really seeing a problem yet, to take the reins in your own hands to begin going, okay, what are my underlying issues? Because one of the biggest culprits of relapse and addiction is relationship problems. It's the codependency issues. It's all of the things that the two childhoods brought into a relationship, just like trying to bump around, you know, tearing each other apart unintentionally, but still that, one person might cope through addiction that way, and the other person might just have really deep codependent issues. So definitely go get some help and also learn through that experience how to begin creating some boundaries to protect your own peace.
Yeah.
And that whoever is, the identified patient in this situation, it's not your responsibility to save or fix them. It's your responsibility to learn how to love yourself. And part of that is learning how to have healthy boundaries and what you will and won't tolerate.
That saying no to somebody like, look, you can't live in my home if you're going to continue this engagement could be a life-saving thing for them,
Take
you
some
know,
support.
but we don't want to, again, love is sometimes a no, a boundary,
Mhm.
but not from a place of,
Anger or resentment.
punishment
Yeah.
and shaming somebody,
Right.
because that shame and guilt, the addict is struggling with that. Struggling with that. That's the lowest frequency they're dealing with. They're constantly dealing with guilt and shame. And if you engage with them, that continues to invoke that feeling by the ways you're engaging it. It's like, look, I love you, but this is a no. I can't agree to this anymore.
Totally.
I pray I'm here to support you. I'm here to support your help. I want to support you. And if there's anything that I've done to participate in that, I take ownership and responsibility. And that's the challenging part on the other part, because I don't want to feel guilt and shame for being the contributor to your addiction.
Or the enabler.
I need to look at like, okay, let me take ownership. That's like the Ho'oponopono. I mean, maybe we touched on this and, that's a very powerful practice. Like if there's any part of me that's contributed to your suffering, please forgive me. I'm sorry. Take ownership, 100% responsibility for your part in the dance, and then please, I just want you to know I love you and I'm grateful for you in my life. I'm grateful for the lessons I'm learning to become a better lover, better human, and to have more compassion and care and trust in the process.
Totally.
Because the stages of change Heather's mentioned, those are very powerful. If you want to understand those who are struggling with addiction, look at the book. I think it's called Stages of Change, and understand that before they get into action, they're in pre-contemplation, contemplation, and preparation. And until they get to action stage, they're just taking those actions are very scary. And shame and punishment and criticism never gets anybody to change.
Yeah, totally.
Well, there's a lot I could say on that, but I think we're going to save that for another segment. But I do know
Okay.
that what we work on within ourselves, we help to resolve and dissolve within our own lineage. And so
Amen.
again, it all starts with us
That's right.
individually.
Yeah.
What am I seeing in the mirror? And what do what do I'd like to see differently? How would I like to see it differently? How can I go about it? The bottom line, it starts with self-loving of yourself, accepting yourself for yourself, and that is going to cause some gut wrenching crying.
Yep.
It truly is, because there
Yes.
is nothing you can do about your eye color. There's nothing you can do about the shape of your nose. There's nothing you can do about certain things. So you can either, fall into I love myself and accept myself. And how do I accessorize to make myself feel a certain way as I get along with how I look, and
Mhm.
create the feeling behind that, and then take the action forward to create new pathways that
Mhm.
open up. And when source is there, source is going to open them up, because they're like, look at that, they just walked into a new pathway, and let's help them
Yeah.
get along. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy, because it does trigger your shadows, it does all kinds of things, and don't let that clam you up. And it
Mhm.
takes courage, my friends. It
Mhm.
takes courage, and you have people to reach out to, like Heather and Jason, and the power of love, and their website will be in the description. And we're going to be doing more and more and more on addiction, and so that people can just expand their awareness of it. And again, it always still comes back to, what are you, what are you doing about
Mhm.
you, not about what everybody else is doing. I know
Mhm.
I've had to learn that myself, and I can't change others. I just have to work on the change within myself.
Mhm.
That's right.
Absolutely. Well, so well said. And I think that, it's important that we do this in community, because a lot like the courage that you're speaking of, a lot of times we've been so beaten down by being either on the side of the addicted one or the side of the supporter. They both have such a tremendous fallout. These are the types of connections that I think we were created for. We heal in relationship, and it's a really important piece for people to know how necessary and how healing it is to really start to open up about what's really going on.
Hmm.
And we speak anything that we've shared here, and any of the work that we do in our home, in ourselves, is because we've been on both sides of this equation, both the addict and the supported, both the codependent, and we've really lived all of these things. And I think we learn every day a little bit more about ourselves, about the process of all of this. And the more we learn, I would say we both feel how a shared common humanity, it
Hmm.
makes us really understand that we're really not that different.
That's it. You just said it.
Yeah.
The shared common humanity. And
Yeah.
that's really what we want to presence. Like, listener, if you're listening, just know you're beautiful as you
Mm-hmm.
are. You are beautifully fractured just in the perfect way. You're a shining diamond. You're the Om Mani Padme Om. You're the blue jewel in the heart of Divine
Mm-hmm.
Mother's heart. And those fractures, those fractals, those places of the cuts and the wounds, when we come into connection and self-love and compassion and that common humanity, it's good to be a human.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to be here. Let's love it all. Let's love it all. That's what integrity really is, wholeness,
Mm-hmm.
that all of me loves all of me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to disassociate. I don't need to wear masks. I don't need to hide my authentic self. When you come into your authentic true self, life gets really good. Now you're attracting really beautiful people in your life. That's been our experience,
Mm-hmm.
and I appreciate you saying that, because there was a time, many, many, many years in my
Mm-hmm.
life, I wasn't okay in my body. I wasn't
Same.
okay to be here. It didn't feel safe. I didn't feel loved.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking for nub in all the wrong places, right? But coming to understand the power of love is right here in this holy moment,
Yeah.
where two or more or three or more are gathered, whatever it is, God is here. And I pray that you, as you've been
Mm-hmm.
listening, you feel the presence and the power of love.
Mm-hmm.
And you follow those fireflies. I often say, when you're in the dark forest, follow the fireflies, follow the little glimmers of light that are bringing you home. And that's our prayer this time.
Well, viewers, we're going to leave it there and let you think about all of that and feel into that. And if you need assistance, again, Heather and Jason's website will be in the description. And we're going to have more shows on this and more expansion on this to bring awareness and understanding, so that each of us can start with number one, which is self.
Mm-hmm.
And feel that divine source, that divine spark within us to create anew. So we have this opportunity now on this platform to bring information out. And I'm just happy to be a part of it. And then I listened to Spirit, and then I reached out to Jason, and Jason responded back, and we had no clue of each other's existence before one particular day. And so here we are, and this is going to continue. So much love, everyone. Like, subscribe, and share this video, and stay tuned for more. Jason and Heather, say goodbye.
Aloha.
Bye.